What's up, fam? Welcome to another edition of God Dreamers. Today, we're going to be talking about STEM. Before you run away and tune out, this is going to be really good. And for those who you don't know what STEM means, it means science, technology, engineering, and math. So don't leave yet because this is going to be good. What we're going to be talking about is I have Miss Christine here that's going to be talking about her organization that actually pours into young women of color, teaching them, how to succeed in life, not just in a career wise, but just personally. So this is going to be a good conversation, and so Miss Christina, thank you so much for being on God Dreamers. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, absolutely. It is my pleasure. So thank you for inviting me and having me.
So we've been trying to put this together. Well, it had some
For a little
challenges here and
while.
there. And even today almost didn't happen because I screwed up the time. I was thinking we were going to do this a little earlier, but it's actually a little later. So I'm a little off today, but praise the Lord.
Yes. All's well that ends well.
So, Christina, share a little bit about what you do. You're the founder and executive director
Hmm.
of Hype, or I guess it's Hope for Youth. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, what is that? Share a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So my legal organization, formal name is Hope for Youth Incorporated, but Hype is our street name. So we work with kids, so we got to have a street name. And Hype stands for Hope for Youth through providing education. And that's exactly what we do. We empower young girls of color by giving them hope for their future through the lens of education or through the vehicle of education, and more specifically through technology education.
So who came up with that name Hype? Was that you?
So it was me, but it was the Lord 100%. It was God. So the word like hope or provide, giving hope and providing hope has been something that God many years ago shared was like part of what my purpose was. So before I even started a nonprofit organization, I was never that girl that said like, oh, I want to be my own boss or I want to start my own company or this is something that I want to do. But of course, it started with like me trying to discover what my purpose is and just trying to kind of like seek the Lord for that. And as a result of that, one day the Lord kind of shared with me a tagline or like a passage or like
Mm.
a sentence. And this is actually Hype's tagline. But the sentence was like, your purpose basically is to empower a generation to live their lives full of hope, driven by love and void of fear. So that was something that I wrote down what many years ago, wrote it down on an index card, and I would have it on my mirror, just kind of
Wow.
looking at every day as like this is what my purpose is, and that can look so many different ways. But years later, when I decided to start my nonprofit, I went back to that, like full of hope, driven by love, void of fear, and just kind of wanted to, incorporate that into the name. So it first started with like the idea of being full of hope. And then that's kind of where, the evolution of Hope for Youth came. But Hope for Youth, again, like I'm working with young kids, like it's very in your face. It's very, it can be mean so many things, but like what students know us as today, almost 5 years later, is Hype, right? I'm a part of Hype. I get Hype. And so the Hype is an acronym for Hope for Youth through providing education.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Wow. I mean, so you got the vision early on, which is which is awesome, really, because a lot of times, we even some of us as adults don't have a vision yet. We're just kind of going through life, working and then just going through the motions. So share a little. One thing I didn't know until recently is that you're actually a computer engineering or computer
Hmm.
science major, which are
Hmm. Computer engineering. So I
engineering.
majored in computer engineer and I worked as a software developer for 7 years. Yep.
Another engineer.
Yep, yep, yep.
Woo! I'm an engineer
I'm a tech
too.
girl.
Yeah, so that's so cool. So I can only imagine coming out of high school, going into college for engineering, and unfortunately, you don't have too many people of color
Yeah.
that pursue that. So what was that like coming out of high school, or even during high school? Because I would imagine you would have to take some courses that kind of prep you for. that, right? Did you already know in high school pretty much what you wanted to
No,
do? No? No?
I didn't. And you would think, right, that I would have, but I did not. I did not. The school that I went to didn't have any computer science classes or computer engineering
Okay.
classes. I would say the closest I got to a computer anything type of class in school was keyboarding, like typewriting, learning how to type. Took a keyboarding class in high school,
Okay.
and I took the maths. So I took like pre-calculus was I think the highest math that I took in high school. But I actually really loved to dance in high school. So I was the
Oh, I
captain
didn't
of
know
my
that.
I was the captain of my high school's dance team.
Okay.
I gotten the chance to actually perform at the pregame of a Super Bowl. When I
What?
was in high school, I traveled to London with the team and did like a performance there once. So I loved to dance. It was just something
Wow.
that was the thing that I was, you call it quote unquote passionate about. And I was good. I wouldn't say that like I was amazing. I was going to go on to be like a professional dancer, but I
Yeah.
was good. I was good. I was good enough to make teams. I really loved to do it. I
Yeah.
was good at choreography and things like that. And so I thought I wanted to major in dance in college. And so this was like, it's my senior year. We're thinking about like major, what am I going to major, what I'm going to go to school for. I'm taking the ACTs, the SATs, like that sort of thing. And in my mind, I am going to major in dance. Like, I have no idea anything else that I want to do. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I want to be a dancer. And my dad, being the great, father that he is, was that, kind of was like, not so. You're not going to major in dance, Kristina. This is not what you're going to do. And he actually saw things in me, and I guess in what my skills were educationally that I didn't see. And computer engineering at the time was very new. So I graduated high school in 2002. So it was relatively new.
Mhm.
My dad, I really had taken to everything about, the internet and computers. It wasn't something that he studied, but he was reading books about
Yeah.
it, was just really intrigued about like all of the new technologies.
That's cool.
And
Wow.
he would see me because we got our first PC in the house when I was probably in 8th or 9th grade. And he would
Mhm.
see me, going in and tinkering and, playing games, and I could figure things out. I was also interested in it, but I was interested in it, I would say more so from like a fun perspective. I first started coding when I created a MySpace page. I didn't know that I was coding at the time, but that's kind of what I was doing. So anyway,
That's crazy.
because my dad didn't want me to major in dance, he asked me to consider computer engineering, and I didn't know what it was. But he, was like, "You like to solve problems. You're really good at math." I think he looked at some of my test scores, and those you will take the SAT, and they'll kind of say like, "Oh, this is probably what you need to major in." So he took some of that, asked me to consider computer engineering, said I could have a good future basically with that.
Yeah.
And so, heeding the advice of my dad, really respected his opinion, decided, okay, well, I'll major in computer engineering. I'll minor in dance, but I'll
Yeah.
major in computer engineering. So that was what led me to choose that as a major. And I had
Wow.
never taken any type of course until I went to college. But yeah, prior to that, knew nothing about the industry or the field or anything.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating too. I mean, to go not even know, but that's cool thing, and that's one really great thing about having great parents is that
Yes.
they can kind of see already what's in you, and you may not even realize what that is. And in your case, that was the case. You
That
were
was
thinking
exactly the
dance,
case.
and he kind of observed you and said, "No, you might be good at this," and then lo and behold, you go down that path, and wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And
My
loved
parents.
it.
Yeah, and liked it too. Yes, which
Yeah.
is because most of the time I tell my kids, hey, have you considered this? Oh, daddy, I don't want it. But but in
Yeah.
this case, it turned out really well. That's awesome. So walk us through not having any background in computer engineering. So I can only imagine when you go into school that you're probably, I would say, a little nervous about what you're going to encounter in terms of your classes and
Mhm.
learning all these. So what was that? What was that like? for you?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. So you can imagine, I literally had no idea what I was getting into. Not only that, but I went to college at Prairie View A&M University. It's HBCU right outside of Houston, Texas,
Oh, okay.
and
A friend
had
a friend of mine went
decided,
there. That's cool.
yeah, yeah, love PV, love PV. But I decided before I even got accepted into Prairie View, because this is something that my dad and I decided, that I was going to be a computer engineering major. Lo and behold, as I get accepted, I got a scholarship there. We start talking to, like, the admissions counselors and things like that, and you begin declaring your major. They did not have a computer engineering program. Like, no one had graduated from that program. They had electrical engineering and they had computer science. Now, me, honestly, not knowing anything about any of these things, I could have majored in computer science. And I think that's kind of what they were wanting to steer me to do, to say, well, could you consider computer science? But I was like, nope, I've already decided I'm going to major in computer engineering. I literally have no idea like what's going on. And so the dean of engineering actually worked with me to create the computer engineering
Stop it.
program. Yeah. So I was the only student who graduated with a degree in computer engineering the year that I graduated. I was the first student, the only student. My senior year, the classes that I was taking, no one else was taking. I was taking classes by myself, because as you get kind of higher in your degree, those are when the courses become more specific. So once
Yeah,
I finished
yeah.
taking, all of the maths and some of the other computer science and tech related courses, my senior year, they became very specific to computer engineering, and I was the only one in my class, which was really cool. And hindsight, of course, is 2020. But hindsight is showing me that many, many years ago, I always kind of had this inner, I would say this inner just drive, when I decide I'm going to do something, that this is what I'm going to do, even if no one has done it, even if it hadn't
Yeah.
been done before. So I feel like I probably always had this entrepreneurial spirit in me, that it was never something that I really kind of set out to do. It
Yeah.
just kind of happened that way. So I say all that to say that, yes, like, the program was difficult. Everything was new to me. The computer science courses were in particularly, like, hard for me. And I would say that a lot of the students who were taking the computer science courses, they had either taken it in high school, or, they knew about coding and programming, and all of these concepts were really new to me. So I already knew that I was going to have to work a little bit harder in order to,
Mhm.
pass. But, I would just say, kind of like, once I got through it, and once I became the only person in my senior level classes, then it was just really me and my professor. So, he really helped me to figure out, like, the engineering component, the engineering component of, like, the computer science,
Yeah.
software development, software programming. He really helped to connect the dots for me there. And I had a couple internships in college, which were really helpful as well, in terms of, like, getting a job once I graduated. But, I would say the most difficult thing for me was, one, like, not really knowing what I was doing and kind of being on this road by myself, because no one else was a computer engineering major. But two, which is a huge reason why hype exists, is even though I was going to an HBCU, like, computer science and even the electrical engineering pathway, there were not many girls. And so, like, I was the only girl, like, in the lab, all night long working on things. And, while I was great friends with, like, the other guys who were, in the programs with me, it still just feels a little weird or a little lonely, kind of being the only girl there.
Yeah, I remember when I was in school 80 years ago, when I was at, Georgia Tech. I mean, it's a state institute. I mean, actually, it's one of the largest institutes in Georgia, but actually, as
Mhm.
far as technically speaking, it's one of the, best colleges or
Yeah.
engineering schools in the nation. And so, when I got there, I was so nervous
Mhm.
because there was nothing. Everybody told me that, hey, when you go to Georgia Tech, it's going to be super hard. A lot of people flunk out. A lot of people don't make it. And then they used to have the saying when you walk in as a freshman, they'll say, look to the left, look to your left, look to your right. One of you guys is not going to graduate. I'm like, dang,
Yeah.
that's one of the first things you hear there. And so when I got there, fortunately, they had a program. It was a program for people of color that kind of helped us to kind of navigate through the intensity of freshman year and learning.
Mhm.
So that helped out a whole lot. But I can only imagine you being you know, the only person
Yeah.
involved in here. Now, the cool thing about it, since you were the only person, a lot of, I would imagine you were almost like a grad student, working with the professors,
Yes.
kind of one on
Yeah.
one. So that
Yeah.
kind
I
of
could
helped out.
create what my
Yeah.
senior project was going to be. Yes, it was amazing. It was really was a good experience. But then I would say similar to you, the summer before my freshman year, I also came in with like a cohort of all the STEM students, so the STEM major students during that summer, and we took some of our classes together. So some of
Mhm.
like the one-on-one classes together that summer, and so I formed relationships with a lot of
Mhm.
the students who I would be in classes with during the summer before my freshman year, and we went through basically all 4 years together. So that also really kind of helped to kind of inform what my experience was like in college altogether.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit.
Mhm.
You did a TEDx talk not too long ago, and I listened to it, and you were kind of talking about, which was, it was really, I mean, for you guys that, before we close this out, tell them how they can find that talk, because it was really good, and you kind of really dealt with some of the emotional and mental stresses of being, first of all, being a woman, but also just being in an environment that's, you don't see too many people like us. And then that
Mhm.
also that pressure of trying to be better than everybody else, and setting
Yeah.
that example for others. So can you share a little, just a snippet about your experience as once you graduated from college and then being environment, in the work environment and being surrounded by mostly male figures, and how
Mhm.
you felt and how you kind of navigated through that?
Yeah, so like so interestingly enough, and what I share in my TED talk is in middle school, we moved from an environment where, everybody looked like me and, we knew all the kids, like we live on the same block with everybody who you're going to school with. It was, might not have been the safest environment, but it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
You know everyone. And so moved from that environment to another school, moved to the suburbs, really kind of country. I saw it as like the country. I'm from Louisiana. We lived across the street from cows, and like farms and things like that. And went to a new school in middle school and high school. And I was, there were probably 2% like Black kids in the school or in the city or in the country, I would say rather, but in the community, in the neighborhood. And I would say that was the first time, and I didn't realize it really at the time, but it was the first time that I'd experienced any type of racism, microaggressions, like biases against me. I can look back now and, remember countless occasions where my dad had to come to the school and really just kind of fight and advocate on my behalf because he knew that I was not being treated the same way that some of the other kids were being treated. And I was just kind of blind to it on many occasions. But, I went to college and I mentioned going to an
Mhm.
HBCU, and that was a really great time,
Yeah.
even though, even though I was only one of very few, maybe two girls in the engineering program. But it was, I was around lots of Black people, and lots of people who were rooting for my success. And as the
Yeah.
only computer engineering major, didn't feel I wasn't competing against anyone, even in college. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I needed to prove myself for anything. I was one of one. Um, but then went to work right after college, and it was a much, much, much different experience at work. And as an adult, and really again my first time, I would say experiencing like these feelings of like every day going to a place where I don't feel like I belong there. There's no one that I can talk to about even the things that I'm feeling inside, having doubt about myself, feeling insecure, going through what's called imposter syndrome. No one who I could talk to about these things. Or who I felt comfortable bringing my insecurities to, because again,
Yeah.
I'm at
Yeah.
work and I'm like, if I bring any of these insecurities to my colleagues or my managers, like it's going to be seen as weak. It's going to be, I'm going to be rated and ranked lower when it comes time to promotion. So always feeling like you have to put on a front and a face, and I'm always competing every day. And you can imagine, like, you spend And I did consulting. So I was a consultant, for my first, again, 7 years in corporate America. And the first 4.5 years I was on the road. I was traveling. All my projects were out of town for almost 5 years straight. And consultants, are known to work 60, 70 hours a week
Mhm.
regularly. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's nothing to work like that many hours. And so spending so much time of my life questioning myself, and spending so much time in my life feeling like I'm in competition, and my voice, not feeling that my voice is being heard and my perspective even matters. And it plays a toll, it
Yeah.
takes a
Yeah.
toll on you. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it until much later, the impact that it had on how I felt about myself, the impact that I had on even my relationship with God, me always feeling like I needed to prove myself
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
every relationship. I didn't realize it until much later, but ultimately I ended up leaving my career. And I talk about this in my TED talk, that I ended up leaving my career, but it's because I felt like I chose the wrong career. I felt like I didn't belong, and this just is not for me. And so I need to find something that is more in line with, something that I'm passionate about and something that I could be happy doing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I talk about in the TED talk.